To Congressman Matt Gaetz, who sits on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, thanks for your time tonight. So as we await what is next in this trial, what's at stake?
Well, I think that you've got a situation here where the campaign is not implicated, the president is not implicated. I'm far more focused on the work we're doing in the Congress to interview Bruce Ohr in the coming weeks. Bruce and Nellie Ohr were like the Bonnie and Clyde of collusion. You had the spouse of a senior government official who was in collusion with a foreign spy with the purpose of disrupting a U.S. election. So to me, that's the far more significant story, getting to the bottom of who at the Department of Justice knew that the spouse of a senior official was working with Fusion GPS, and I hope the Congress will answer those questions soon, because it seems far more relevant to foreign interference in the election than whether or not Paul Manafort paid his taxes in the 80s and 90s.
What will the implications of whatever the outcome here is, what will the implications be ultimately on the Mueller probe, Congressman?
I don't think they'll be that significant, because you don't have anything here that implicates the president or any element of the campaign. You've got, tax questions and involvement with foreign entities that far predate Donald Trump even contemplating running for president. And so I'm not too focused on how this will impact the questions about collusion or obstruction of justice. I'm more focused on the important work we've got to do to make sure that never again do we have a political opposition research file that is then able to be used by an intelligence community to go spy on a political opponent.
But you know that if there is a guilty verdict here in the case of Paul Manafort, you know there will be celebration by some, particularly on the left. If he is ultimately found guilty, how does the GOP spin that? What would the messaging be from your party?
People should pay their taxes, and if they don't, they're going to get caught. I mean, I think that's really the story of Paul Manafort. It doesn't have much to do with his involvement with the Trump campaign or political activity. I think that the strategy that Bob Mueller's using is to try to create as much pressure around people like Roger Stone, like Paul Manafort, like Rick Gaetz, perhaps Jared Kushner and Donald Trump Jr., with the hopes that somebody will lie and say that there was something that implicated Donald Trump. But there's no evidence that that occurred whatsoever. So here with the Manafort trial, you see an attempt to build leverage, but no real evidence connecting the president to any type of Russian collusion or any type of Russian interference in the U.S. election.
I want to talk to Andy McCarthy more about that in just a minute, about the documents that are involved as evidence there and what those could eventually mean. But does a conviction here, does it boost the chances or boost the momentum behind a Mueller sit-down as far as an interview with the president? Do you see that happening?
If this jury comes back guilty, not guilty, or hung in any of those circumstances, it would be a very bad decision for the president to sit down with Bob Mueller. That is a perjury trap. The president hasn't done anything wrong, but he should not put himself in a position to be in some sort of circumstance where just remembering something incorrectly could create a destabilizing event while the country is doing so well. Let's focus on economic growth and jobs, and let's not have our president distracted with these things. The conduct of the sitting president is the purview of the Congress. And that's why I think Rudy Giuliani is right to be fighting against any potential subpoena by Mueller for a presidential interview.
You've got a law background, right, Congressman?
Yeah, I do. I was an attorney.
What did you think about those? What did you think about those questions from the jurors? Did that tell you anything? Asking questions about reasonable doubt?
Boy, if I was a prosecutor, I'd be really nervous about that, because if a jury has questions about what reasonable doubt is, then certainly they're asking those questions because they're wondering whether or not there may be reasonable doubt, which is their job. So I think it's really good news for the defense, bad news for the prosecution. But again, juries are unpredictable. The one thing I've learned involving myself with juries is that no two are the same. And here I wouldn't read too much into the questions, but I also wouldn't read too much into the verdict.
Good stuff. All right, Congressman Gaetz, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Here now, Andy